All right, so we'll get started in about 1 minute. All right, so we'll get started in about 1 minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 4 of the CMU CS Academy live Q&A session. So what this session is a little chat with a few CS Academy student team members where they're answering high school student questions about college life at CMU, as well as working on the CMU CS Academy project. We request that teachers post questions to the chat and we will reply to them on those topics. And we have a few questions of our own that we'll go through. I am going to be the moderator for this discussion. My name is Erin Colley. I'm the program manager of CMU CS Academy. And before we get started, we're all just going to share a little bit about ourselves. So Lisa, why don't you start? Thanks.
Hello, I'm Lisa. As said, what am I? I'm a CMU student. I'm a CS major and I'm a senior right now. I'm minoring in game design and what else do I normally say? On CS Academy, I work on content. So basically, I just do whatever Elliot, who's another staff member, tells me to do, and I'm like, yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Lisa. Maya, why don't you go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Maya. I'm a junior at CMU and I'm a math major. At CS Academy, I work on the content creation team with Lisa, so that's been pretty cool. And what else? I'm from Bangalore, India, which is where I am right now.
Cool, thanks, Maya. And Johnny?
Hi, I'm Johnny. I'm a junior majoring in computer science, and I'm also minoring in music technology. And I'm actually not officially working on the CS Academy project this semester, but I couldn't stay away, so that's why I'm here and also helping out with some of our professional developments.
Awesome, thank you all. So the first thing we're going to start out talking about is just a little bit about your experiences with CS Academy. So what is your favorite part about working on the CS Academy team? Johnny, why don't you start?
Sure. I think my favorite part has been this past summer, I switched over to working with the teacher support and outreach teams. And so what I've really enjoyed is been interacting directly with teachers and being able to help out with these sessions we have to help teachers learn how to use the program. And so I've just found like all of my interactions with teachers to be like so amazing. Like they're all incredibly passionate and motivated and really mutually helpful with each other. And since I feel like I owe so much to my own high school teachers, it's like feels nice to be able to kind of like, I feel like I'm giving back in a way, and that feels really good.
Awesome, thanks for sharing, Johnny. Maya, why don't you go?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess my favorite part is the fact that I'm kind of using my skills to, impact like real people and real students. And I think it's just so cool to like come up with something and like, push my creative boundaries and have something show up on a site that like people get to actually use. That's pretty fascinating. And it's like my first experience doing something like that. And yeah, I also just really love the fact that it's made like working on the content team has really made me like again expand my creative boundaries rather than just like improve my Python skills, but it's more of like how to approach computer science and coding from a more creative perspective, which has been pretty cool.
Awesome, thanks, Maya. And Lisa?
Yeah, so for me, the first time I heard this question, my instinctive answer was like, oh, I really like making content because like it's cool to like make exercises and all that. But then when I really thought about it, I realized that I think my favorite part was actually doing like a lot like Johnny, actually when I did my first summer here, the PD sessions, and they were actually impressing during that time. And I remember the very first time it happened, I was like terrified. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And these are like teachers, and I'm supposed to like help them. How do I help them? But like, it was really rewarding actually getting to interact with them and like help them understand things and then try and explain things in different ways to get them to understand. And then like later on in the summer, I actually got to go with my other friend Amy and do like another PD session where we actually got to be in charge of actually teaching the content as well to the teachers. That was also really fun because sometimes like when we'd wait for questions, me and my other friend would just like start asking each other questions because we'd just be like, questions? No? Well, you know what? We'll just ask each other questions. So we had a lot of fun with that, both just like entertaining ourselves and entertaining the teachers as well. So yeah, I just really like interacting with the after teachers. I haven't done a lot of it, but it's always been really fun when I have.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. The next thing I wanted to ask is how did you get involved in the CS Academy project and why did you decide to join? Maya, maybe you could start. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I think when I was a freshman, I had a close friend who worked on the team, so I already knew like what CS Academy was doing. And then my sophomore year, I was a TA for an Intro to Python course, and that's when there were a lot of TAs for that course who also worked on the team. And I kind of got to know more about the stuff that CS Academy was doing. And for me, being TA was really interesting. I got to like directly work with students and see how like different approaches to computer science topics like affected their learning differently. And then that's what like drew me to CS Academy, because I was like, well, like over here, I'll be kind of responsible if like to like create that content that like helps the students learn rather than just like teaching it, which is what I was doing before. So yeah, I think that's what kind of got me involved. And then I applied and I got accepted and I'm here. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. And the course that she's referencing is taught by one of the founding professors of this project. So that's why there's so much overlap there. Lisa, why don't you go next?
Alright, so I don't have as nice a story in the sense that I was just a sophomore and I was just like, I should find something to do this summer. And then I was like, internships are really hard, especially when you're not confident enough to be like, I can do things. So then I was just looking through opportunities because our advisor sends out opportunities every semester, being like, hey, these are things happening in the CS department. Here are things you could do. And I was scrolling through and I was like, hold up, what is this thing? I never heard of CS Academy before then because I took 112, but I don't know. It never came out when I took it. Probably because Cosby wasn't teaching it then. But then, like when I found out about CS Academy, I was like, "Whoa, this is a thing. This is like actually amazing." Because even when I was like younger, I've always cared a lot about education and especially about like equity and making sure that like everyone has access to it, especially because how important it is nowadays. And like, it's like everyone says it's the great equalizer, in which it is, but only if everyone has equal access to it in the first place. So that's the reason why I was like, wait, this is a program that's about like teaching and like making sure everyone has access to it because it's like basically free for all the high schools, and also about making sure that like yeah, teaching CS in general, which I also found like is really important, especially nowadays since it's useful in basically all fields, regardless if you go into programming or not. So yeah, when I found out that I was like, this is a thing, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So I was like, yes, I'm so excited. So I was really excited to apply and like I was super excited to get in. But yeah, that's how I joined CS Academy.
Cool. Thanks, Lisa. And Johnny?
Yeah, so I had seen our assistant dean of CS sends out a list of summer opportunities, and CS Academy was one of them. So I was interested because, like, upon looking into it, I saw that like the sort of problem that CS Academy was trying to like, or one of the few problems I should say that it was trying to sort of solve was things that I could like directly relate to from my own recent high school experience. Like I was lucky that there actually was an AP computer science at my high school, but it was really boring, like the things we were doing. And so one of the goals of having things that teach intro to programming, but it's not like programs that do your taxes or like et cetera, et cetera. That was something that I was really interested in. And I had also seen how a lot of my teachers who were in the technology roles were kind of being forced to switch over from things they weren't necessarily, um, you know, things that they had studied and more doing it out of necessity. So I think the process was pretty fun. I had interview with Aaron, of course, and then I was interviewing for the QA team that summer for quality assurance. So what Elliot did to make sure that I had like, I guess, was very meticulous and detail oriented was he gave like the most ridiculously insane spot the difference puzzle I've ever like seen in my entire life. So that was quite fun. And then I also talked to Cosby at the end, is the like kind of third round. And that was also an experience because I'd never actually had a class with him before. So that was my first time meeting him, and he was very present to talk to. So it was very intimidating, but also very eye-opening and inspiring.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. We're going to shift focus a little bit to more about your life here at CMU. So what are some things that you do at CMU other than CS Academy? What are some other things that you're involved in? Maya, why don't you get started?
Yeah, so other than CS Academy, I would say like my main extracurricular slash club that I'm involved in at CMU is an a cappella team. We're called CMU Sounds, and we sing like fusion, South Asian and Western music. And it's been very, very interesting because it's just a cool way for me to like connect to my culture, even though I'm really far away from home. And also I think it's we're part of like a circuit, so we kind of travel across the US and compete and perform on campus and off campus. So that's, I think, like it's sort of like a de-stressor for me, and it's just like a way for me to relax and like sing and have fun at the end of a long day. So yeah, that's like my main extracurricular besides the main project.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. Lisa.
So for me, okay, this year is kind of different given like COVID and all that. But before this year, in my sophomore year, I joined a club called ballroom dancing, and like it was at first when I first joined, I was like, I don't know how to move. What is this? I'm gonna be so bad at this. But it was really cool because I danced with one of the upper level people, and like it was like such a magical experience. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like a princess. And because like we were doing waltz, which is the like magical like dance that you see in all the movies, and I was like, wow, I'm moving and the music is really good and everything is amazing. So after that I just got sucked in, and I went from doing like no extracurriculars to spending like 20 hours a week on ballroom, because like we also have a competitive team. So like some reason I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go all in. So then suddenly I was like actually gonna compete, so I just did like both parts, man and the women's part, and it was just like super fun. So that was basically my life. And then recently with COVID, I haven't been doing as much like I guess senior extracurriculars, but I've actually just started doing things just like hanging out with. Since I live with two other friends, like we generally try and like stay in the same space. Although recently we started hermiting, which is not good. But before that, we'd all just sit in the living room and we'd all just have our positions. Like I would be on one couch, my other friends on the other couch, my other friends in an armchair, and we'd all just like work together. And it would just be like nice because we'd all be together. And then like just playing games more recently. I've been playing a lot more like video games randomly, but yeah, that's been my life outside of doing schoolwork.
Cool. Thanks, Lisa and Johnny.
I think the main sort of, I guess, group or social thing I'm involved with on campus or off campus now is Jewish life, being involved in the Jewish community at CMU. And that was like sort of, I guess, an aspect of my identity I hadn't really explored before I got to CMU. And I was actually very hesitant to at first because I kind of thought I wouldn't fit in that community just because it wasn't necessarily something I was super raised with. And so I was really happy after a few semesters of being too nervous to take the dive. I finally decided to start going to some things, and I found that I actually found a home there very quickly. So that's something I've been very happy about my CMU experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny. So the next question we have is from the chat, and it's what is the thing that each of you has worked on CMU CS Academy that you're the most proud of? And Lisa, why don't you start and also let everyone know what your favorite video game is?
Okay. Man, that's a hard question because like whenever I have to remember what I've done, I'm always like, what have I done? That's a very good question. I don't know. I think In a way, like I think the PD session that I done probably is the thing that I was like the most proud of in a way because it was a lot of fun and I think the teachers like got a lot from it. Like the original PD I talked about earlier when like it was just me and Amy and we just like got to teach everything. We went through exercises and like we spent a lot of time just like pretending to be different roles. Like we pretended once to be like just people working together as in students, once we pretend to be a teacher and a student and like we would just be like acting like different types of people and like all that was really fun and like I think we got a lot out from it like in both sense the teachers and us. So I think that would probably be what I'm most proud of. I feel like I should be an exercise, but I don't really remember a lot of exercises we made at this point. So yeah, probably that PD session. And my favorite video game. That's really hard to answer because I have like so many favorites. It really depends on whether I'm thinking of it like playing wise or like if I'm thinking about it in terms of like the story. Because I overanalyze video games all the time. Where I'm like, oh, this is so cool because it's going through these things. Anyway, so I think if I look at it in the past, probably my go-to answer was Undertale because it has such a good story and like it's just so wholesome as long as you go down the good route and not the bad route. But like it's just really wholesome. So that's like my overall favorite. But my most recent obsession has been Boulder Gates 3 early access. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Lisa. And I too thoroughly enjoy watching you run PD sessions. Not this past summer, but the year before when we were able to do them in person. Lisa traveled to a few different places with me to run PD. And when you have a classroom teacher that can really captivate everyone, that's Lisa. She had all of the teachers like eating out of her hand. They were so interested. And I was like, my job is done here. She's doing awesome. So yeah, thanks for sharing, Lisa. Undertale is one of some of our viewers' favorite video games as well. Maya, why don't you share something that you're most proud of that you've worked on CS Academy? And if you happen to have a favorite video game, you can mention it too.
I don't think I'm very well versed with the video games universe, so I'm gonna skip that. But in terms of the thing that I'm most proud of, I'm trying to think of like a specific exercise maybe because like most of my work over here has been on exercises. And I would say like initially I used to struggle a lot with like the graphics aspect of like making exercises. And I think like as I've like come into my own as a content creator, I think I've like improved the like more graphical side of stuff. So I guess like one of my favorite exercises that I've created, it was for APCSP. I think it was called like Night Sky, and it's basically like you have like a telescope, and as you like move your mouse around the screen, it like magnifies like planets and stuff. And I just thought that like that exercise was it was like cute because like I mean I made a lot of versions of it, and it was like really bad at the beginning, and then like after all the feedback, like the end product for me was like I just really loved it. So I feel like that kind of like embodied the whole like that was like my first like actual journey through an exercise where I felt like I started with something and then over like a lot of iterations it came out like to like better than I expected. So yeah, I guess that one exercise pretty much I would say.
Yeah, the exercise creation process is is pretty challenging. So when you finally get one that you're that's able to be published into the curriculum, I think is always a really rewarding experience. Johnny, what would you like to share?
I think I'll just hard agree with Lisa that definitely professional developments have been my favorite thing. As far as video games, I'm gonna pick one, not necessarily my favorite, but one I like a lot is this indie game called Hyper Light Drifter. And one of the things I really like about it, the creator or the main creator of this game actually like has a heart condition, and so he wanted to make this game, but he wasn't sure if he necessarily had time left. And the game is actually sort of like symbolizes his condition and trying to fight that. And I thought it was really well done and very beautiful. So I like that one a lot.
That's awesome. Thanks, Johnny. And yeah, with PD this past summer, I think you were more nervous than some students about presenting to teachers, and you ended up being our all-star. So It was awesome. Thank you. So moving on to the next question, I'm going to bounce back a little bit to some life at CMU. So what has been your biggest challenge since coming to college, and how have you overcome it? Maya, why don't you start?
I feel like this is a very like generic answer, but definitely time management. I think when you're in college, I mean, obviously depends on like your experiences from high school, but I think being in college was the first time that I was like away from home. I'm gonna have to just like take care of myself more rather than like have, you know, people take care of me, I guess. And this obviously like for example, my sister, like she boarded for like the end of her high school, so like going to college was like kind of okay for her, but for me it was like, wow, okay, I have to like manage my academics. I have to make sure that like I get to know people in my freshman year. I also have to, you know, just take care of myself and like try to stay healthy. So yeah, I think my biggest challenge, like just in like especially entering freshman year, was definitely learning how to like prioritize different aspects of my life. Because even like within college, of course, like health, whether that's physical or mental, is like so important. So yeah, I would say definitely that time management. And I think over like my sophomore year and now like I'm a junior, so I think I kind of have it down, maybe not completely, but I think I'm like almost there. But yeah, definitely time management.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. Lisa, why don't you go next?
Mine is, I don't know if this is a normal or not normal answer because at least from a literal sense, there wasn't a big difference that I had was like noticing when I went from high school to college. I was kind of just like, wow, I'm in a new place. This is my new normal. Okay. But I think this isn't not even just college, but in general, I'd say confidence has been like a very big problem that I've had for a very long time that like I can't say I've overcome it fully, but it's just something that I've learned to like kind of find the support I need, especially because CMU, I found like the courses are like really hard, which also happened in high school, but like especially at CMU where like I could be doing like a problem set in CS and I'll spend hours and hours on it and I still would have like no idea what to do. And that's kind of like it can be a hard thing to kind of go through, especially at first when you're just like, wow, does this mean I'm like really dumb or like do I belong here? I can't figure out how to do any of this. And like I think I found that like finding other friends that like kind of all like similarly like think at a similar pace to you and also all like are really supportive helped me a lot. Like I have this one like I have some friends that who move like a lot faster than me, so like even working with them sometimes is like mentally hard because I'm like, oh no, why am I so slow? But then I've also found friends that like are like kind of equally paced to me, and like we'll just like go to each other and sit for hours together and be like, what is happening? I'm confused. And she's like, I'm also confused. And we're like, okay, let's just try and figure this out together. And like yeah, I think that's why just like finding the friends I think was like the biggest thing that has helped me, not necessarily overcome it, but like learn to keep going even when these things are hard. Like also exams, like when both of us would spend like hours studying and like trying to figure things out, but still not really do the best on exams because we wouldn't have that like spark that allows us to solve that one problem in that exam. So like yeah, just finding support was just a really big thing that has helped me get through these years. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa and Johnny.
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge throughout my whole like CMU experience has been so I applied to CMU as sort of my long shot school, and that's okay. Like to have that mindset, right? Because no matter how good you are, it's always going to be a long shot when it comes to things like this, or at least a chance. But then that like mentality that this was a long shot and that I didn't necessarily deserve to be at CMU actually just continued as I entered it. And so it's kind of been through my past 2 years just a continuous slow convincing myself that I actually do belong here. And the problem with coming into it with that mentality is it's like very damaging. And I think it's constantly been an excuse for me when if I ran into an issue, I didn't like push past it or try as hard because I just had this expectation that I wouldn't actually do that well. And so I just kind of rationalized it with that. So for me, like doing things that are valuable, that like kind of inherently make me feel like valuable, like things that I really care about, like CS Academy, and also things like teaching. So I'm a teaching assistant this semester, and that's also really helped with my confidence and feeling like I do belong here. So it's been an ongoing challenge, but definitely one that has improved for me.
Awesome. Those are wonderful stories to share. Thank you all so much. The next thing I'm going to ask is why did you decide to go into STEM for college, and for thinking about it from a female in STEM or minority in STEM perspective, what is that experience like at CMU? Maya, why don't you?
Yeah, well, for me, I think, well, I went to high school in India, so the system is a little bit different. So until like your sophomore year of high school, you do like all your subjects. And then when you like reach your junior and senior year, you like choose a stream. So you either choose like science or commerce or like humanities. And honestly, for me, I think I just always had like an affinity for like math and physics. Like I always loved it. I mean, I love the humanities too, but I was just not like really good at it. So I was like, you know what, like this is something that I like and I can do it. So I might as well go into it. So that was like kind of how I guess I got started in STEM, and why I kind of decided that like STEM was it for me, just because I just enjoyed. I think it's also like uh I just had my mindset, I felt like was better suited for STEM, just in terms of like the way that I would approach problems. And yeah, in terms of being a woman in STEM, CMU has been like a really great experience. Coming from a high school where like we had like my class was pretty small, but we had like a lot more girls than guys. But then in the STEM stream specifically, we had like a lot more guys than girls. And it was like all the guys in my class were like in the STEM stream, and it was like me and like a couple other girls. So that, like going from that to like coming into CMU, where like the undergraduate CS class is like 50% female, 50% male. Like it's been pretty exciting, because I feel like there have been like really good role models for me just coming in as a freshman and having like my CSTAs be like female identifying math majors. Like I think that's been cool, because I just feel like that representation really helps in terms of you being able to tell yourself, okay, like I can also probably like reach I can probably like do the same thing. So yeah, it's been really nice and really refreshing. And yeah, I think CMU's done a pretty good job, especially in the CS department, of like maintaining that ratio. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. Johnny, why don't you go next?
Yeah, sure. So, wait, I need a second. I kind of forgot what the question was, because I was thinking about Maya's answer, which was talking about having role models, but I'm actually forgetting what the original question was.
So the initial question was, why did you decide to go into STEM for college? And then,
that's right.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess, yeah, I kind of have a funny story of how I ended up deciding to major in CS specifically. I think I always kind of liked sciences. And as I mentioned, I had AP computer science in my high school. And I had actually been exposed in my middle school. I also had programming classes that I actually had the opportunity to take. So going into high school, I knew I kind of liked the programming thing. So I decided I kind of wanted to see what more there was. So I took AP computer science early on, 10th grade. But then the problem was there was actually nothing after that. So like there was like basically a couple years where I didn't actually think about programming, like, or computer science or anything like that. And so when it came like college application time, trying to figure out what I want to do, I kind of forgot about computer science for a while. And it got to the point actually where now still when I go back to my high school and talk to some of the undergraduates, they ask me how my chemistry major is going, because no one actually realized that I ended up majoring in computer science. But eventually I kind of reflected and realized that the thing I had enjoyed the most over like my past 4 years had been the computer science classes and the programming. So I decided to go for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny. Lisa, why don't you share?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of have a story behind this, but I think for me, it was kind of like when I was younger, it was, I think just culturally in my family, it was kind of expected that I go to STEM, especially since like I was good at it, like in the sense of like science made sense to me, math made sense to me, I could pick it up decently quickly. But if I was completely honest, like, yeah, physics and chem and biology, they were like great, but like I don't want to spend all day just doing a physics problem and whatnot. Like for some people that's great, and like those people are amazing, but I could not imagine doing that. So I remember just like actually having like being really upset about this in middle school once, because like I was just like, wow, I'm just gonna be doomed to have a sad life. But then like I know in freshman year, basically, I forgot. So basically, we have a 21st century skill class, and we had to basically take one, and I ended up in the programming one partially because my parents wanted me to. So like I was just like, I'm gonna be horrible in this class. I don't know how this thing works. But I remember the very first day, like when I went in, and they're like, yeah, okay, just open this program. And like we clicked the thingy and opened it. And then they're like, okay, type in like quote, or like it was like print, quote, hello world, quote, and then press enter. And then like it actually appeared on the screen, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is magical. It just works. And it's not just this like foreign like thing that's like super hard. And I was like, after that, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And then after the rest of the semester, like we just ended up like making like little games and whatnot and different things that were just really fun to make. And I remember just spending like all my time that I wasn't doing homework just adding in random power-ups that like didn't really do that much, but I was like, oh, now I can have extra points and stuff, and just adding these things to my programs. And I had like a lot of fun with that. And that's when I was like, wait, I can do something in STEM that's actually fun. And also I always really like the humanities. Like I'd always be spend all my time just thinking of stories and whatnot and like games and whatnot, because I was like, whoa, there's a lot of stories you can tell through like games and different mediums that would be really cool. And I was like, wait, CS is involved in all these different things. I could actually like do creative things and also do CS. So that's kind of how I ended up just like following the path of CS. Actually, though in sophomore, not sophomore, junior, I had to take APCSA, and I was so bored. I will admit, because I was like, wait, we went from like making games and cool things to just like typing in like strings and making like lists that you don't see anything. So I was like, okay, I almost like was like, never mind. But I was like, okay, I still remember freshman year. It was cool. So it has to still be like cool somewhere. But yeah, that's how I think I ended up following in CS. And I think, oh yeah, the other part of the question was the female in CS, in STEM, right? So I think for me, it's kind of weird because I never consciously had thought about it until like this thing was brought up to me actually in college. Because in my high school, luckily, there wasn't a really big difference in a sense in a lot of my classes, even in my like biochem and physics classes. Like we had like probably a decent ratio of female to male. Either that or I'm just really oblivious, which is also really possible because I don't notice things a lot. But like it wasn't enough that I actually noticed anything. But I do remember thinking about how like I kind of had this kind of internal thought process of like, oh, the guys are a lot smarter than me and they're just better at it than me. And partially it was because like there were guys in my class who were like doing these things that were like way beyond me. And I'm like, what the heck? How do you do all these things already? And I kind of had this thought process of like, oh, they're just magical beings. And like I remember that in college, that's when I started to actually understand like how I guess things that were younger actually can affect us, especially in the sense that like now I think probably was because they actually had started earlier, they actually will like encourage to look into these things earlier, while like I guess for me it was kind of just like a no, that's like too hard or too difficult for me. And like that's why I think those type of things that like I never really thought about had affected it. And I remember like when I came to CMU, there's always this kind of thing that I struggle with, and I found like a lot of my other friends struggled with that were female, is this idea of like, did I get in because I deserve to be here, or did I get in because I'm female? Because they want to maintain this 50-50 ratio. And I remember this is a thing that like me and my friends sometimes would have serious conversation about. We were both like, yeah, we don't know why we necessarily got in because like we don't do the best in our classes and whatnot. And I think it's been like a journey kind of understanding and realizing how like it's not a matter of like who's smarter or better, and like there's all these things that play a part. Like for instance, when did you start CS? What experience have you exposed you? How much like encouragement did you get? And all these things affect you. And I think seems more about really like looking at your potential rather than looking at like, oh, what have you done? Because of the fact that like, yeah, other people probably were encouraged earlier, and that's why they're like quote quote better than you, like maybe at the beginning of college, because they had these experiences that like you didn't have. And like everyone has these different starting lines. And I think CMU is about recognizing that. And that's the reason why like it's not 50-50 because they are trying to like force this 50-50 thing. It's because they recognize like all these factors that come into play. And that's something that like took me honestly a really long time to recognize. And even now I'm still like, huh, and like learning more and realizing more, like even now. But yeah, I think just being in STEM as a female, there's a lot of feelings that like you don't necessarily think about. But like now that I'm like older, I guess it's really weird because now I guess I'm like a senior. But like now that older that I recognize is coming to play, which can like, yeah, there's just a lot of things that affect you. But it's just important to realize that like people have different starting lines. Everyone has their own potential, and like, yeah, there's no such thing as boys being better than girls or girls being better than boys and whatnot.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. Let's see, what do we have next? So how did you know that college was the right choice for you? And if you have any experience with this, what happens if you want to change your major or career paths when you are in college? Maya, would you mind starting?
Yeah, in terms of whether college was the right choice for me, one, I do think that like my family background played a pretty big role in for me in deciding whether to go to college because I do come from you know my parents and my grandparents and everyone, they're all like teachers, they're all in academia. And so I feel like I didn't really think of like, do I not want to go to college? Like that wasn't really like a thought process that I really had. But like now that like I'm like if I think back to it, if I was like in high school right now and I thought that I had that choice of like college versus maybe taking a gap year or maybe doing something else, I feel like I probably would have still chosen college just because I feel like I do love to learn. And I feel like that sounds pretty like vague and generic, but even in high school, especially with the subjects that I was passionate about, which was like math and physics, I like I loved like attending classes. Like I mean, obviously, like the work aspect of it was you know kind of grueling, but I definitely like enjoyed learning like new concepts. So I feel like that's why I knew college was right. That's why like thinking back, if I was in that position where I you know had that choice, I guess I probably would still have chosen college just because I feel like and also I feel like college isn't just about like learning more in the respective in like your subject. It's also about like having this like experience where you meet people who are like so much more like different from you and you're like working with them and you're collaborating with them. And that's been I feel like the biggest learning experience for me, just like being away from home, talking to people who are very different from me, possibly have like very different views from me, but then like you know knowing that we all have like some purpose that we're all working towards and we can like work together. So yeah, that's I guess my reason.
Thanks so much, Maya. Lisa, why don't you share next?
Yeah, so like Maya, I don't, for me, I never really thought not going to college was a choice. I didn't realize it was an option, just I guess from also my family background. So, wait, hold up. What was the full question? Because I also forgot because I was thinking about
So,
Maya's answer.
wanting to go to college, how did you know? And then also, if you have any experience with this, if you got here and decided you wanted to change your major or you think you're thinking a different career path, what's that experience like as well?
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, when I got here, I think it's kind of interesting because I'm in this weird place where like I like CS as a tool, but at the same time, like especially I found in my classes where like my CS classes kind of are my least favorite classes if I'm completely honest, because of the fact that like I think math and theory has never been the thing that I really liked in a sense. I like being able to use CS in like creative ways. And I also like doing like a lot of different skill points. Like since I have this game design minor, I ended up like for instance taking a lot of project classes where like kind of just always chose not to do the CS side. So like I know for instance in like last year I was in a class for like making VR games and like for some reason in our group I was supposed to be a programmer and I wanted to do a little bit of art because I always liked it, even though I wasn't the best at it. I always liked art, so I was like, oh, I could do a little bit of it. But then our 3D modeler, because it's a VR, we have to do 3D modeling, and our 3D modeler kind of went AWOL. They just vanished, and I was like, well, guess I'll just figure out how this entire thing works and like model things and make a game. So like, yeah, I found from there like honestly, there's a lot of things that I like ended up learning about, just not just like CS, but like I've learned gained like art skills. I've gained like 3D modeling and art skills, I've also learned, for instance, about doing like more, I guess, kind of leadership roles and like, for instance, like PMing type of things, which is like project management and those type of roles I realized are actually a thing. So I never really changed my major, but I think I've realized like I don't have to become a software developer. I think that's something that even now I'm still struggling with because I feel like the expectation is like, oh, I went to a CS major, I paid all this money, I should become a software developer. But I think I've slowly like, especially if my sisters encouraged me to like actually look at what I'm interested in and like really apply to things that like aren't just, oh, I'm gonna go into software development, but like project management, in which like for instance, it's important to still understand CS because you need to like, what's it called? Be able to like communicate with everyone, right? You need to understand the technical side as well as like everything else, which is why it's still important to have these type of backgrounds. There's also like, for instance, I forgot what they're called, but like analysts, counts, I don't know. There's a lot of different positions that I found like CS backgrounds benefit in. Also things like game design, where like then you can actually like know what's possible and like help the people that are like developing it, and then like you can kind of just step in if it's ever needed. Things that are just like even like in my animation class, like that I'm taking right now, they were like, yeah, it's like even if you're doing like creating models and doing like rigging and stuff like that, which is how you actually make characters move, is basically they're like, yeah, having CS is beneficial because then you can like automate a lot and it's almost kind of necessary at this point to like at least have a little bit of CS so that way you can like make things as efficient as possible. So I've definitely started nowadays like exploring and like applying to not just like CS jobs, but like a lot of different things that like aren't just CS, but like apply it to different other fields. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. And Johnny?
Sure. I think I'll add a little bit about the switching majors topic because a lot of my friends, actually, like most of my closest friends, I want to say, have actually switched majors since arriving at CMU. And so for most of them, it was actually uh, they were taking classes in their major and they also took some classes in other things. So I had a friend who is a cognitive science major who his degree was sort of affiliated with computer science. And so he ended up taking some of the computer science courses and kind of realized that he actually liked those more and was more interested in that. And so he switched. I had a friend who switched from business to information systems. And so oftentimes it was finding something that was sort of adjacent or similar to what they were doing. And that made the transition actually fairly smooth and not too bad to be able to kind of change course about like halfway or a fourth of the way through their CMU experience. I did have a couple friends who have had like more abrupt like sort of changes. I had someone who was doing architecture who kind of 2 years in realized they didn't really want to do architecture anymore, and that wasn't necessarily, I think, the easiest. There wasn't necessarily a great place to go from there, but he was able to find something else that he was really interested in. So it's definitely possible, and like obviously the earlier you've kind of figured out what you think you more want to do, the easier it is to transition. But you do have 2 years where you can kind of figure that out, definitely at the very least. So it's definitely possible. So don't be panicked if you don't feel 100% sure going into college, if that's what you really want to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny. We have a question from the chat for Lisa and Maya. So thinking about some extra opportunities that you receive as a female, so things like Girls Who Code or clubs that are focused on female involvement, does it contribute more to your imposter syndrome, like I'm just here to fill a quota, or does it help with support and mentoring and things like that?
Yeah, I can get started. I think initially, I think a lot of like the way that you approach it just depends on like your mindset, like coming into college. And like Lisa said, like there is this like imposter syndrome, I think, that is kind of like, okay, do I actually deserve to be here? Like, am I actually like quote unquote smart enough to like be at CMU or, you know, work as a TA, or did I just get that because like, you know, I'm in a STEM field and like I'm, you know, a female, so therefore I was just like pushed into it. And that's definitely been something that like I've struggled with, especially in like freshman year going into sophomore year. But over time, I think I realized that just like exactly like Lisa said, it's more about like your potential. And I think colleges see that, and even like professors who like you're TAing for see that. And I think like, and even with in terms of like extra opportunities that you receive, like for example, the Grace Hopper Conference is something that is like for women in tech. But I feel like I went to Grace Hopper this year, and I think that the best part about those things is it's not, I feel like you have to switch the mindset from like, I'm getting this because I'm a girl, so like, oh, therefore like imposter syndrome, to like, this is so great that I can see, other women who probably have similar experiences to me working in this field, doing well, who are successful, and I can like reach that position. And that representation, like, I feel like that mindset switch of like, this is really good for me, rather than like, why did I get this? Like, why do I deserve this? Is a much better, it's just, I guess, a better perspective, a better way to like look at it. And I think that that's like my advice also to any people who are female identifying watching this. So yeah, I feel like that was a little vague, but that's my answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. Lisa, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I guess for me, when I was younger, I feel like it did add to imposter syndrome. Like, I know, especially like when I was in high school. Okay, the thing with Girls for Code, I was mildly sad because like when I found out about it, they were like, "You're too advanced to do it," and I was like sad. But anyway, I remember having a time when I just like thought about it for a long time, and I was just like, yeah, like, what about the guys, and why don't they also get these opportunities? And I was like, yeah, it's only because I'm a girl that I get these opportunities, and like kind of as I said, I was in the kind of mindset of like, I guess like the why. And I definitely remember like I think even like until like late college, I was still in the mindset of like, yeah, it's because I'm female that these things exist. And like I never actually took advantage of them. I definitely wish I did, but I never really did because I think there was that feeling of like, yeah, we're just here because like they want to do this whole equalizing thing and all that stuff. I think it only really took until like I guess a lot of breakdowns in college and like talking to my sister and like realizing that there is all of these things that come into play, there's these different starting lines that I finally started to understand that like, yeah, they're not here because of the fact that like we're female in the sense. It's here because of the fact that it's trying to equalize this idea of like kind of starting line of like trying to get everyone to be on that same starting line so that everyone can like, kind of fulfill the potential that they have. And I think that's the reason why, like nowadays, I'm like, wow, these are really cool. I wish I had done them more. Like, I wish I didn't have that mindset. So, like, I definitely would encourage, like, as Maya said, to like kind of think about like how you can take advantage of it and like recognize like it's not here to make you feel like you are like not as capable as the guy, so you need this extra help. It's just there to like kind of get you at the same place in terms of like encouraging you and like making you feel confident enough that you can like actually fully put yourself into it rather than just like kind of stopping yourself. It kind of also reminds me of something like I had some other QA sessions with Emily, who's another member of our team, and something she brought up a lot is how she had read a study about how basically when females versus males would take a test, they would find that like if they both did badly on a test, the guys were much more likely to keep going, but the girls were more likely to drop and just be like, yeah, there's something wrong with me, I can't do this. And I think that's just kind of like this follows this whole idea of like they're trying to like encourage us to help us have that confidence to like keep going, especially when things get hard, especially when there's like this current like of people who are talking about like, oh, all like is it biological factors, is it not, and all this type of things, to just really be like, yes, we should keep going and not just like give up in a sense. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all both so much. So to wrap up today's session, I think we're going to have one more question, and that is, if there was one piece of advice that you could give your high school self, what would you say? Johnny, why don't you get started?
I think I have a kind of random one, but one I believe in, which is so my freshman fall, I did cross country. And prior to that, I had done like no running. I was super unathletic. And the summer before, I didn't really prepare at all. And I got there and it was like horrible. I was the slowest on the team by far, to the extent that I was actually like slowing down the slowest group of runners on the team. And normally on cross country, it's very difficult to like actually detriment your team by being on it because only the top 7 scorers in a meet are the ones who actually count. So the rest of you are kind of just for funsies, I guess. But my problem was I was so slow, I was actually inhibiting the slower members from actually improving because they had to wait for me to catch up with them. And so that was a really difficult experience also because coming into it being totally like cold turkey also, I injured myself like all the time. And so overall, I thought the experience was like miserable. I hated it. And after one semester, I quit. And now looking back, I feel like I should have stuck with it for a couple of reasons. One, it would make me a lot more better at being fit and taking care of myself now, which is something now I still kind of struggle with. And then two, I think there's a lot to be said for like the kind of resilience that I would have gotten from that, from being able to run into something that truly I was like terrible at, like completely awful at. And if I had kind of pushed through and actually improved in that, I think I would have like a ton of confidence. Or now I have like little micro things in my classes now, right, where I run into a wall and I'm like, I have no idea how this works. But having like that experience, I think it would feel like I would be confident a lot more to just like push through, because nothing can be worse than cross country.
Yeah, sports definitely play that type of role for sure. Lisa, why don't you go next?
For me, I have like two things. One, from a CS perspective, is pay attention in math class. I think I found all my problems nowadays are just me being like, I can't solve math. And like half time it's just like, oh, you have to do this like random like ln trick or like log trick to like make this problem work that I just forgot about. And I'll just be like, gosh darn it, why am I stuck on algebra? Anyway, so yeah, pay attention in math, especially when you go to CS, because it will help you a whole lot. Don't be like me and just be like, oh, this is not important. It's fine. But yeah, I think the other thing though, like that was more like, I guess more meaningful advice would be, I think, kind of not being afraid to like fail, mess up, and be slow and not know things is definitely something that I wished that like I was better at. Like even now, the fear is like always there and it makes things a lot harder. But I remember like one time I was having a conversation with one of my friends and we were talking about how like when we were coding, we were afraid to like just break things. We were afraid to kind of just like if we had something kind of working but not fully working, we were afraid to just like take things out or like try different random things because like there's just this fear of like, oh no, what if we break everything? But then when we went to our other friend, like he would just like pull apart his code and like it would just be like he would just like not be afraid at all. And that's why like we found that he would get through things a lot faster because he wasn't afraid of like, you know, messing up. He wasn't afraid of like, you know, just breaking everything down. And like that's the reason why like both of us kind of realized like how kind of anxiety and this like worry like kind of really hindered us. I've also found like throughout the years of like school, there's always this fear of like, oh, like not being good enough, not being able to like actually solve everything. A lot of times I found myself like kind of struggling to survive rather than like really learning. And like especially when I took my internship this summer, I found myself wishing that like I had spent more time just like really trying to intake information rather than just like pass my classes and not been so scared of like for instance going to office hours, which like I know everyone would be supportive, but at the same time I was always like really afraid, partially from also having social anxiety, but I always just feel like, oh no, I don't know this basic thing. Are they gonna judge me for this? And like as a result, I'll just wait and I'll just like not go until like it's kind of like, yeah, it's like if I'd gone earlier, I would have gotten support a lot easier. So yeah, not being afraid to like not know things, not being afraid to seem like quote unquote dumb. There are actually no dumb questions. Like even if it's literally just like nowadays, I'm literally just like, how do I do probability gig? I literally went to office hours being like, I don't understand why. How do I know that two conflicts are P times Q? I forgot how anything works. And like realizing that it's okay to go to those with those dumb questions. It's okay to be like, hey, I don't understand this concept that like may or may not have been mentioned in a textbook, and like I still just don't understand it, and it's okay to just like go to them and ask for that help and like just really like take your time and be like it's okay to be at different pace than everyone else. So I think that's the one thing that I would like tell myself. I don't know if I'd be able to actually like believe it when I was younger, but I definitely have encouraged myself to think more about it and really like take the time to like try and like go and take advantage of resources and like not be so afraid of doing things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Maya?
Yeah, I also had like two things, and one of them overlaps a lot with what Lisa said, which is just like don't be afraid to seem like you don't know stuff. And I think that something that I struggled with when I transitioned from like high school to college is like obviously like college level stuff was like way higher. And even though I had like a pretty solid math background in my freshman fall, I was very confused by some classes. And I think I was always very scared to like speak up, whether it was like in front of my professor, whether it was in front of like TAs who are like literally there to help you with your doubts. And so again, just like Lisa said, I wouldn't go to office hours. I would just, you know, be like, I can figure this out. You know what? I can do it. I can do it. But like I couldn't. And like having that help is like not, it's not a bad thing at all. And I think that like came from me being like in high school and not really like when I was in high school, I was always like even like within the class, I would always be like afraid to like ask questions because I would be so scared of like seeming like I didn't know stuff. And also like I think being like the only one of the only girls in like a class of like a bunch of guys who seem to know a lot more than you just feel like if you say something that's maybe not that smart, you're just gonna, you know, you're just like speaking for all women, which is unfortunate. But I think that if I had kind of made that mindset switch in high school itself, which is like it's okay to, you know, like it doesn't mean that you're like not smart. It, like we're like everyone's learning, and it's okay to like speak up and be like, I don't understand what's going on. And that would have helped me a lot in college. And also just like taking initiative, I think, in more aspects of my high school, because I did have a lot of opportunity, but I had like pretty low confidence levels, just in terms of like starting a project with like if I felt like there was something really like there was like a really interesting aspect that I like wanted to get more involved in, just like even like reaching out to teachers or like you know, organizing something. Those things were just like I was just like I can never do that. And then when I came to college, I was just like, okay, I now have to like I have to like take initiative on a lot of things, especially like working on CS Academy, working as a TA, like all of those experiences. They've just taught me that like taking initiative for like areas that you're passionate about can just help you so much, just in terms of like, you know, good like leadership skills, I guess, and communication skills. So yeah, definitely working on my communication and asking questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have one more question that popped up in the chat that I think you guys could do a nice job of replying to. So what advice do you have for high school students who may not have a lot of options to participate in CS, but want to? So does anybody want to take that one on?
Yes, I could. Google is a pretty amazing thing nowadays because I don't know like exactly off the top of my head, but I know like I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things online nowadays that you can kind of like go into. There's a lot of apps that are like, oh, teaching you basics of how to code in a sense. There's a lot of like I think Khan Academy also has now CS things that like you can just play with and just like start just working on like trying to do CS things and just like after a while just kind of not being afraid to just dive in a way, which can be kind of like scary, especially at first. But like I know like nowadays like there's a lot of tutorials online where you can just like Google like how do I make a basic blah 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 program, and then there are a lot of things like literally have the code there for you to just like potentially just copy and just play with. And I think just like especially for me playing with code really helped. So like I would just kind of like follow a tutorial how to download like Python, which can be a struggle, I will admit. Like getting like your thing set up is like can be such a struggle. But like in that case, don't be afraid to like reach out to people and ask for help. And that's like teachers who can try and refer to resources, commenting on the post, or even like reaching out to the people who made them actually is a thing that people do. I didn't realize that until I took my internship, but people actually do like email the people who create things and just like ask, and that's completely fine to do. Like, yeah. And then after you just get set up, just like maybe either like following along or just even copying the code and changing things and seeing what it does. And all that I found like just really helped me try and like start figuring out how CS works. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of great like YouTube channels out there. Like I guess a couple that come to mind are like the Coding Train. I think is a really nice one where it's this professor from NYU who does these sort of live coding demonstrations, and you can find a variety of topics and a variety of like levels of programming experience of these different things. And I think the biggest piece of advice I would have is just try making things. Like, don't feel like you don't know enough. Like, just go for it, and look for like ways online you can also interact with people. And if there's like sort of coding challenges or things like this where there's a community, try to join that. I think nowadays there's like a lot of like Discord communities and things like this where you can find like-minded people who are also trying to get interested in CS. And you're not alone if like you don't necessarily have something at your school. Like there's a lot of people out there who are also kind of trying to be interested in CS, don't necessarily have that direct resource. So you're not alone in that. And so finding a community of people who are also looking for that, I think, is really helpful.
Thanks, Johnny. Maya, did you want to add anything?
I mean, just I guess agreeing with what Lisa and Johnny said, there's a lot of resources online, especially if you just don't have that opportunity in high school. Like my high school didn't offer computer science, but I did do a little bit of Khan Academy and, you know, tried my hand at some coding before I came to college. And that introduction is really helpful. And yes, definitely like finding communities and just know that like you're not alone. And just because you don't have like that direct access to CS resources through your high school doesn't mean that that can't be like a future like prospect for you in terms of college. A lot of people coming into college as CS majors don't have prior CS experience, and that's like okay, and that's completely normal. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for so much, and everyone that's here joining us today, thank you for joining us. I'm going to share my screen really briefly to show everyone our schedule. We have one more day of this, so 2 more sessions today and 3 more tomorrow. To hear some more from some members of our CS Academy student team. Thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.